Good evening. I'm David Murray and I'm the National Crime Correspondent for the Australian newspaper. I'd like to welcome you to An Evening with Lynda La Plante as part of the Talking Ideas series at State Library, Queensland. I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of this land and pay respect to their ancestors who came before them. The location of State Library of Queensland on Kawilpa Point was historically a significant meeting place, a gathering and sharing place for Aboriginal people. We proudly continue that tradition here today. I also acknowledge and welcome Allen and Unwin Publishers and their publicist, Isabel O'Brien, who's travelling with Lynda. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, back at the scene of the crime, so to speak, where I wrote some of my book on the murder of a loving mother, Alison Baden-Clay. Thankfully, libraries provide not only books, but spaces to write, to meet and to discuss. They also have a crucial ingredient, especially on a day like this, air conditioning. As you came in, you will have noticed some rolling images. They're from the State Library's online digital image collection. In keeping with tonight's crime theme, these photos take us back in time to the Criminal Investigation Branch building on the corner of Georgian and Elizabeth Streets from 1912 to 1959. And you'll also have seen a photo of Betty Shanks, who in 1952 became the victim of one of Brisbane's most famous unsolved murders. Shortly, we will be joined by Britain's Queen of Crime, Lynda La Plante, in conversation with ABC Local Radio's Loretta Ryan. It's a real honour to introduce Lynda, a pioneer whose work in print and on screen has enthralled us all. Lynda and I ride on two different sides of the fence, but the line between true crime and the best crime drama is a thin one. Lynda's meticulous research is legendary. She has been debriefed by detectives, forensic scientists and prisoners, visited morgues and brothels and witnessed autopsies. She has the respect of police, forensic experts and lawyers. I can tell you from experience that respect is hard-earned, so I'm hoping I might get some tips tonight. It's probably safe to say all of us are here, we all share crime as an obsession. And why, I can't say for sure, but perhaps it's simply because we're all driven by an interest in truth and in justice. Lynda La Plante's body of work in this field is remarkable. She is the author of numerous international bestsellers and is the Emmy and BAFTA-winning creator of acclaimed TV crime series Prime Suspect, starring Helen Mirren. Lynda crafted the phenomenally successful series Widows, recently adapted into a film by Steve McQueen. In 2008, Lynda was made a CBE in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for services to literature, drama and charity. She's a member of the Crime Thriller Awards Hall of Fame and is the only layperson to be made a Fellow of the Forensic Science Society. In Australia, to celebrate the launch of her new book, Widow's Revenge, tonight is Lynda's only Queensland appearance. Loretta Ryan is the co-host of breakfast shows on Monday to Friday on ABC Radio. She's been a regular on the Brisbane radio scene for 36 years and has also hosted a statewide show for the ABC. Her media career has also included television presenting, and more than anything, she loves a chat. So please join me now in welcoming Lynda La Plante and Loretta Ryan to the stage.
Thank you, everyone. Lynda, I think we first have to say I'm sorry about the heat. How are you feeling?
Well, I'm fine, but the hair's going bananas.
Now, I must confess that I found out about a guilty pleasure of yours, so I wanted to start off the chat with giving it to you. Now, you have a look in there and tell me if that is your guilty pleasure.
It's licorice all sorts. I can't tell you, at the airport today coming out, there was a jar where they serve, teas and coffee, and I thought, they're licorice all sorts. But they were huge. I had 4. I thought I'd better clear off, though.
Well, there's more than 4 in there, but you didn't like the round ones, so I made sure the round ones aren't in there.
You know about that. How do you know? The round ones with the little dots in. When I was at school, there used to be worm tablets. You know, and my father has a letter saying, "Dear Daddy, I've got worms."
Well, I hope you enjoy them.
Yes, thank you very much.
Speaking about school, though, I was surprised to learn, and I know that probably many people know that you were dyslexic, or you are dyslexic. So, was that challenging at school?
Truthfully, it wasn't really, because I think there's an awful lot of labels that families immediately, at schools particularly, can't wait to put a label on a child, dyslexic. And in reality, I think it's a much simpler problem than they're making out to be. I mean, somebody will actually probably say you're talking rubbish. But, I mean, nobody really noticed that I was dyslexic because I was very good at covering it. Most dyslexics are very, very retentive memory because you don't want to look like an idiot all the time. But I was noticed very early because I was reading a book upside down.
Oh.
And Miss Ash, you see, I remember her name, Miss Ash said, "Would you get up and read, Lynda?" Right. Up I got, book still upside down, turning the page. And I was making it up. Oh. And after she said, "You stay behind, come here." And she said, "Now, why didn't you read that?" And it was the first time I said I had a problem. But I was very confident. I can remember when the alphabet was written on a big board and they put A, B, up. They go, "Yes, D." No, it's F. So it was one of those things that eventually, when she realized I couldn't read, she made me an alphabet that was all in drawings. So A was ape for the A sound, ant, A. And she made this for me, and within a very short time, I was able slowly to read. But the retentive memory a dyslexic has is quite extraordinary because you learn very, very quickly. And for me, in my career, I found out very early when I put a microphone down or a tape recorder, people would clam up. If I even made a note in a notebook, I noticed they'd back off. And so that memory ability has really, really been very, very beneficial for me. So I talk a lot with dyslexic societies and to say, "Don't worry, look what you can do."
Well, what about when it came to acting? I suppose your retentiveness came in there because you had to learn your lines and remember them.
As long as somebody read the lines first to me, because what happens if you reread a word, it won't go away. And I was playing Lydia Languish in The Rivals by Sheridan at Oxford Theatre, and we had a reading, and somebody very quickly read through the script. And there's a point where she says, "Pass the sal volatile." And I, in the reading, the first reading in front of all the other actors, I went, "Pass me the sal volatile." And they all laughed. And, thought, and afterwards, the director said, "I think it's very funny the way you mispronounce that word, but I don't think the audience are going to pick it up. It is sal volatile." All right. Okay. If you knew how many times sal volatile came out.
But when also you were writing and directing, was that a problem because you had to translate, you had to tell people? Did they laugh at you? I think there was a stage when you got a word wrong.
Yes, porn. Went to the pawn shop, P-O-R-N, and they were all going, "Have you done with porn?" And I think, what are they all laughing at? I don't know. And that was the lesson. And a lesson that, this is what I mean with dyslexia, you guard yourself. Never again. I have somebody read right the way through, and they will pick up when I'm mispronouncing something, misspelling something. Well, misspelling is the other thing. I can't spell either, so who worries? But as long as you have, and I used to have this remarkable secretary. She was very, very large, and her nickname was Two Seats because she always took up two.
No!
But she was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And she could type so fast and interpret what I was saying. And it's a lesson. You learn to protect yourself. And I don't think it's just dyslexia. I think it's in every walk of life. Look at your back. Watch it.
Yeah.
And it's the same as when you are watchful. And we were talking earlier about, the tragedy that's going on, self-harming children. Why? And that awareness of what's happening to young teenagers now is terribly important. And parents mustn't let anything escape them.
I just quickly want to talk about your acting because The Professionals, I loved Bodie and Doyle. You were also in Bergerac,
Yes.
and I read where Bergerac, they're thinking about doing a reboot. You think you'll go back?
Are they?
Any sort of ideas about going back to acting?
No. I remember Bergerac very clearly because it was the first time somebody had said to me, "Have you ever had an Elton John orgasm?"
What is
This was in the bar. Don't get excited.
What is that?
It's a Baileys cream with brandy. I can't tell you, I spent my entire time very, very tipsy doing Bergerac.
When was it that you decided to leave the acting and really take up the writing thing?
Well, it's, there wasn't a kind of da-da moment where I am a writer. It was just that I got to a stage in my career which was becoming very, very tedious. She's from Liverpool, she's got red hair, and she's short. Prostitute. I played more prostitutes on every single television series, crime series. I fell out of alleys. I was falling out. Hello, love, you're coming my way. Everything. And I'd go for an audition to people in the TV world, and they'd say, "Could you tell us what you've just been doing?" I said, "Well, I played Hedda Gabler at Liverpool." No, we didn't see that. Well, I was in King Lear, Cordelia. No, we didn't see that. Calamity Jane, the Belgrade Theatre, Coventry. No, we didn't see that. Anyway, would you like to read this? It's a prostitute on the... Every time. And I was doing... it was a drama, and I played this really very nervous, quite posh mother. And it was a very dramatic scene, and the actress opposite me said, "Let's get serious. Why don't you call me Margaret?" And I had to say, "Call me Juanita." So I said, "Excuse me," I said, "is there any reason I am called Juanita?" I said, "Because I find it very difficult, because do you want me to be Italian? What do you want me to be?" Down came the message, "The writer likes the name." That's it. So from then on, every time we got to this scene, I knew she was going, because she said, "Call me Margaret." And then I had to say, "Call me Juanita." And in the directors, when they're directing you, you become 10. No, come on. Just stop it. Just behave yourselves. Grow up. Makes you worse. You're on the floor the next one. And so after that, I said, "This script is terrible." Somebody said, "Well, why don't you write? Just write a few storylines, send them in to the editor, see what they say." Big mistake. I wrote 3 stories with myself as leading role. And they were all rejected, very politely. Sorry, it's not for us. But one was called The Women. And it was based on a short news article I'd read with a grandmother who had reached a point in her life of devastation. Her husband had died, her daughter had 3 children, one was a heroin addict, her life was a mess. And she went to rob a post office. And, I mean, she had this hat on back to front or something and said that somebody recognized the hat. Hello, Mildred, what are you doing? Stick 'em up. And it wasn't really funny, but it was.
Yeah.
And so somebody had scrawled, "This is brilliant." And I don't know who it was. So I reworked it and took it another stage and another level. And I now teach this to student writers to say, do not send a manuscript. Do not send a full work. And by that I mean when people send their ideas for a film, TV, whatever, they're inclined to write too much. You have to learn to be like you're a journalist, that you can get the headline and you get the nuance of the story, but you don't need to know every character. You've got to hook that person in, because there's hundreds and hundreds of storylines coming in to every single network every day. And if they get one, big, thick thing, they're going to go, "Oh, you read that, would you, darling?" And they won't read them. So get them, grab them, good title, grab them with a few short lines. And there on my little adapter. And I thought, I won't call it The Women. I think I'll call it Widows. And 2 pages, just 2 pages. And it went in, and I used my married name, Lynda La Plante. The only good thing my husband ever gave me. And I sent it to the right company, because they made thrillers. They made Sweeney, they made The Professionals, they were top kind of gang-orientated series, thrillers. Sent it to the right place. Because if it was a comedy and I sent it there, they wouldn't even read it. But it fell on the right desk at the right time when they were looking for a woman-driven series. I mean, it was great luck, which you always need to.
And before its time, because we're seeing that now, aren't we?
Yeah.
Women-driven things that we want.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when it was made into the movie, which was last year, the year before it came out, I think, the movie?
Yeah.
Yep. Were you happy with the finished product?
Well, Steve McQueen, who made the movie, took the original Widows by the scruff of its neck and shook it, and wanted it to be very modern, very up to date, but at the soul of it were the women who lost their husbands and were driven to commit this robbery. But he is a very political creature, and there's a lot of race tension in it. And he's a magnificent director. And, it generated in me a new confidence and a new interest in my work.
Would you say that Widows was the life changer, or was Prime Suspect the life changer for you?
I'm like a little tsunami. Widows came in with a gargantuan wave. Nobody had ever seen unknown writer, particularly with a name like mine, not using my acting name. So Lynda La Plante comes in. Who's she? Transvestite trucker? Nobody really knew. So then and then it's got 4 unknown actresses and 1 starring black actress. Nobody had ever done that before. And they were gangsters. And 6 hours. When it came out, the most extraordinary thing was Dolly Rawlins, the lead character in it, middle-aged woman, became a huge, iconic, for everybody chasing her in the streets, going, "Dolly, do it, mate, do it." Wow. There was a wonderful energy. And then when that came in and was hugely successful, I was offered everything you can think of, bar another bank robbery. I mean, Everywhere they bring me in, wheel me in. We love widows. We've got this great story about a post office robbery. And you go, no, I did that. Don't want to do that again. And so, again, I learned, rejection, rejection, rejection. You keep on going. And so you'd think, huge success, wouldn't that trigger someone saying, listen, she can do it, let's do this. But it didn't. Because I wouldn't go the route of repeating myself. And then I learnt, because you can tell I'm a bit loud, a bit noisy, and a bit energized. And so I learnt a valuable lesson from myself. I thought, why don't you learn to keep your mouth shut? When you go in for a job, don't get overexcited. Don't say, well, I've got this idea, and I've got that, I could do this, I want to do a thing about Billy the Kid. Just shut up. Let them tell you what they want. So I was very, very good. And I went in to Granada Television. And I kept my mouth shut. And she was saying, we love widows. We thought it was absolutely terrific. Wonderful casting. Wonderful writing. Thank you very much. Keep it zipped. And then she said, what we're looking for is we're looking for a police-driven drama, but with a female heading it up. And she said, we'd quite like her to be a plain-clothes detective. And I went, I've been working on that. It's unbelievable. I've got a homicide detective, female, plain clothes, Metropolitan Police. She said, but this is incredible. What's it called? Prime Suspect. Bingo. Oh, she said, that sounds incredible. Oh, wow, that's great. Could you bring us a treatment in tomorrow? I said, well, I'm still doing the research. I could bring it in next week. And again, from writing Widows, where I found all the villains and the women, I went to the police and I found the policewoman that was Jane Tennison.
Yeah. Tell me about her, because you met her, you followed her, you studied what she did, and that's part of what you do for your research.
Yeah. She was so unusual. She was a detective chief inspector, and she'd come up from uniform up to being plain clothes, and she was very tough. Wounded, slightly wounded. And she said, if you want me at your side, you write the truth. And she would leave me in incident rooms. She'd leave me all over the place. The worst was when she said, have you ever been to an autopsy? Post-mortem, have you been to one? Typical actress, ex-actress. Oh, yes. It's like actors when they say, can you horse ride? Yes. She said, oh, well, that's good, because we're going to one in about half an hour. So I go in. I've got white welling boots that must have been size 10, a green gown to here, a mask, and a hat. And I have no idea what I'm going to be confronted with. You see bits on TV then, but you don't really see the full Monty as you do now. So in comes a pathologist, and he goes, who's that? Who's that? The little one. And some other one, she said, oh, she's doing some research, something. He said, well, bring it to the front then. Oh. So I'm in the front. And he said, now, ladies and gentlemen, we have here a 45-year-old man who was found in the river. Off goes the green cloth. Oh! I mean, I can't tell you. And I'm thinking, oh, don't I cope with this? Ooh. And then comes the why, the famous why. Yeah. Now, I don't wish to insult everybody here, but the thought that came from this body, I have never in my life heard anything like it. I thought,
Really?
he's alive. He's alive. And I just went out like a light. Carried out of the first autopsy.
How did you write about it so well?
Carried out.
What about other research that you do with the police? Then how disturbing is it for you? Because you did go around to a lot of things, crime, you spoke to a lot of victims as well. How disturbing was that?
It's if you have to have great respect to gain respect back. If you're talking to a mother of a murder victim, you have to learn to be very, very gentle, not too tactile, because that's over. And it's drawing people's information bit by bit. Sometimes it's very, very disturbing. And equally so, I have been with a police officer who was describing a case of a murdered child, and he lifted his arms to show, and he was crying. And it was 10 years later, but that image he had still inside him. And I think over and over again, police officers, to my mind, have to deal with such emotional trauma. And I have been very honored by them. In fact, they used Prime Suspect as a recruiting film, because for the first time, you actually saw real police work. And you saw the woman who made mistakes. And so I learned all the time in every possible way by respecting who was giving me time. I think so many writers will take time from professional people, take time from victims, and then do that dramatic license, which is appalling.
Yep.
You say, no, you can't get a toxicology report in 10 minutes. You know, in CSI, sometimes they go, well, the bullet left through is not here, out there, and went up the wall in that painting. How did he know? You know,
Dame Helen Mirren has described her casting in Prime Suspect as Jane Tennison as her coming of age as an actor. That must make you feel very proud to know that you helped to launch her onto the screen. What was she like to work with?
Wonderful, wonderful. She's got a very rare quality, Helen. But what was interesting was when they were casting Prime Suspect, and they said, oh, who do you think would do this? And I said, oh, there's an actress that you have to cast. Her name is Helen Mirren. And I remember one of the producers turned and they said, has she done any television? I said, no, she's a famous theatre actress. Oh, well, I've never seen her. I said, she's got weight. And they said, what do you mean, weight? And I said, she has a strength to her when she walks into a room. And we knew when she came in that without doubt.
You had to direct her, though, certain times, didn't you? What did you have to tell her?
Sorry?
What did you have to tell her when you were directing her? There were certain characteristics.
Yeah. You know, an actress naturally smiles a lot when they're talking to, now everybody come in, let's have a meeting. And I go, no, now everybody come in, we're going to have a meeting. No smile, what are you smiling for? Stop the smile all the time. Also, be very careful not to do that. Don't like cross arms. And somehow, I mean, you never do see, well, Theresa May, have you ever seen her cross her arms? I mean, she could wrap them around each other. She's got such long arms. But you don't actually see the crossing of her. She's always straight and learns how to use her hands. And that's another very major part for actresses because they automatically become tactile. And I kept saying, stop touching the men in the team. Don't touch them.
You decided then to go right back to the beginning and show us Jane Tennison as a young police officer. And that came out of a question and answer just like this. So get your questions ready. You might end up in a book.
Yeah. Yes, ready and waiting.
Tell us about that process.
Yes, it was very interesting because I was doing an event like this, and the question was, what was Jane Tennison like as a young woman? Her family, where did she come from? And I didn't know, because I'd worked with the detective chief inspector at her rank and her age, and I didn't know. And so that never ever came into our discussions. Yes, the discrimination came in, and the real police woman would tell me incidents that had happened. As she went up a rank, they didn't like it. And when you're that rank and you've got to shout to go for a crime scene, you go for the patrol car, they didn't like her sitting in the front seat. Twice they slammed her hand in the car door, so she would have to sit in the back. And it was so that's what I gleaned from her. And when I realized I didn't know, I started to think, it would be very interesting to find out. Where did she come from? How did she get to that rank and that position and that aloofness she had, which I loved, and the ability. She was accused of trying to step into dead man's shoes because she had been overlooked, stepped on. Even the rank going up still never gave her a crime. And then she got it. And so to go back and watch that grow is a wonderful experience.
Let's jump to Widow's Revenge.
Yeah.
When did you decide you had to do another one?
Well, what happened with The Widows, huge success. They wanted a second series eventually. And I'm very honoured because I get so much contact with fans asking me, what happened to Dolly? Where did she go? What happened to Harry? Did he get away? He got away? What happened? What happened? And eventually, I became really fascinated to think, what did happen? And my whole focus has always been really on the lead woman, Dolly Rawlins. Because if you actually flippantly describe widows, you have 4 men blown up in a robbery, they die, their widows take over, and then crazily and successfully pull another robbery. That's light, it bounces like that. The depth is different. The depth is with her. This was a woman who had loved her husband so deeply from the age of 17. He was well-educated, but he was crooked. He was handsome, and he was charming. She worshipped him. He was everything she ever wanted. She knew always of his other side. She knew he was fencing, stolen property. She never really realized the depth of his criminality, but they had an awful lot of money. And all she wanted was a child. And she had miscarried. They even decorated the bedroom for the baby boy, and stillborn. So she took that pain inside all the time. And he came to her one day and he said, no more tries. Gave her a puppy. So this dog, this little dog, and my husband, my dog, my husband, my life, she didn't go and work with him in the antiques. She stayed home, made a perfect home. He kissed her goodbye, told her he loved her, see you later. And the next was the knock on the door. Your husband is dead. All she had was the watch. See, no DNA then. The gold watch which she had given him, the Rolex. This anguish in her was so violent, so unbelievable, because she wouldn't let him go. She wanted him inside her. I am him. He's not dead. He's alive. Then she finds his books, his diaries. But then she finds what he really was. Anybody that worked for him, name, child, address, husband, mother, sister. Don't betray me, you're dead. Everyone that did 1 inch of work for this man was in that book, the ledgers, robberies he planned. So she gets this shock to realize, my God, he was so powerful, powerful. And she's taking the power. She's getting the other women who really think she is mad. I mean, just go along with her. She's got the money. Do what she says. But gradually, her strength draws them in. That's very different to a flippant robbery. Then comes right at the end, just as she's about to organize the robbery, she knows he's not dead, he's alive. Not only is he alive, he has a mistress who has the child that she was so desperate to have. He was never coming back. And that knowledge is like a kind of huge, burning, smarting pain. She says, I'm going to do this robbery. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to pull it off. Nothing will stop me. I will beat him. And she does. Success. Gets away. So everything that has been coming to me from the fans would say, what happened? And Widow's revenge is, what's she going to do? She's going to hunt him down. Or is he going to hunt her? She has the house sold, the bank money taken. She even orders the girls to escape to Rio, because in Rio she knows he's got another bank account. Gone. Now he's going to find out she has left him destitute. What's going to happen? Oh, it's so good.
We've got, I think, a few more minutes before questions. Yeah. In your research for widows,
Yeah.
did you speak to women in jail, or did you speak to the wives of criminals?
Yeah, all of them. Women in Holloway prison. The best one, who led me to create Dolly, was a woman. And when I was out of work, I used to work in a veg market. I was just selling junk, actually, but it was a big market in London, in Ladbroke Grove in London. And there used to be a woman on the veg stall, and she'd have a cloth hat on, a headscarf, nothing like that on her chin, thick coat, woolly boots, socks, and mittens. And she'd go, come on now, darling, come on. Fruit and veg, lovely tomatoes. Feel this, rock hard. Come on, love, feel that tomato. She was a tough, big woman. And when I got chatting to one of the other stall holders, and I said, you know, I'm writing a series about criminals, women. And she, oh, you want to talk to her, love? Her husband's in the nick for murder. Bank robber. So I'm going to swear in a minute. You don't mind, do you? So I went up to her. I said, excuse me. I'm a writer. And fuck off, love. So I went maybe 8 times and got the same. I thought one time she was going to throw a potato at me. And then one day, I don't know why, she just said, do you want to have a cup of tea? She gave me her address, and it was in a high-rise council estate, very rough area, and rang the doorbell, and I heard opera. And she opened the door, and she was a coiffure, permed, beautiful hair, fully made up, in a black fitted suit with high-heel black patent shoes. And you know, it was, hello. And she says, you don't recognise me, do you, darling? The voice, that flat tone. And I knew I found Dolly. And then she allowed me to meet her husband.
Wow,
Yeah.
amazing.
And bit by bit, that flat tone. And when Anne Mitchell walked in the casting session, she was quite overweight, very frizzy hair. And she said, this is my part, and I've waited all my bloody life for this, and you're not giving it to anybody else.
That was it.
The director was like, and when she left, I said, what do you think? And he said, she scared the pants off me. And I said, she's Dolly Rollins. And my God, she came back to 2.5 stone in weight, hair done, everything. She knew her. It was the world that she lived in, her family, East End. And she's, to me, one of the most wonderful actresses I've ever worked with. She's brilliant.
And you've written a dedication in the beginning
Yeah.
of the book to her
Yeah.
as well. Yeah. Lynda, it's been so lovely to meet you and so wonderful to listen to you. We could talk all night, but we've got to, make time for you to sign some books. So please, again, welcome Lynda La Plante.
Thank you.